make sure I start recording our event. For those of you who are just joining in right now, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're coming from and joining in from today. We're super excited to have you. I'm going to give it about 4 or 5 minutes before we get going to let some folks join in.
Looks like we have some folks so far from New York, San Diego, West Texas, Toronto, DC, Minneapolis. Man, I should be coloring in states, huh? I bet we have Berkeley, Seattle. Oh, Canada. I shouldn't have said
Norway.
What? Norway. I missed that. Oh, cool. Oh, we got Denver, Raleigh. Never sure if it's Raleigh. I always feel like I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Chicago, hello. NC, North Carolina, Boston, Philly, Raleigh. Thank you. I'm never sure. You should have seen me try to learn how to say Durham correctly. I still am not sure if I say Durham correctly. Sorry. Madrid. Switzerland.
London.
I just have to ask. I can't do the math in my head that quickly. What the heck time is it in London right now? I want to know. Bozeman, Montana. Hello from DMV. 10 p.m. 11 p.m.
2:30 a.m. Thank you for being here. Oh my goodness.
Oh, let me tell you, Virginia. Okay, so we have I'm trying to think of how far around the globe we have folks from. Do we have someone like Hawaii, Alaska? That would get us pretty far away around. Czech Republic. Whoa. I feel really cool now. I don't know about the rest of you panelists. I feel very cool.
New Zealand.
Well, there we go. I think we've made it all the way around the world right now. What time is it in New Zealand right now? Holy cow.
It's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. Or today, I guess
Sure.
they would say in New Zealand. It's yesterday where I am, huh? It's Thursday at 9 a.m. 9 a.m. is a very respectful time for you to be here. We should
kicking off the day.
You know, this makes me think when we each introduce ourselves, we should maybe say what time it is where we are.
That's a good point.
Give me some context, because what I might say at 5 o'clock is maybe different from what you might say at 9 a.m. or something. So.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Some of us have our morning brains on.
Yeah, right?
Love it. Well, I think I'm going to get things started. How does that sound, everyone? Great.
Sounds good.
All panelists, attendees, thank you for being here today. The event that you're joining in on is called Designing for All, Accessibility, Usability, and Inclusion. So just some meeting norms before we kick things off. The Q&A, you will notice, is 4 questions, but there's also a chat. Use the chat functionality for if you just want to make general comments. But if you have something that you'd like the panelists to bring up, use the Q&A. They will be answering questions at the end. This event will be recorded and transcribed. Fen actually has a closed captioning option for us. Emily is going to toss that into the chat. So if you'd like to use that, you can use that as well. The recording and the transcription will be sent after the event. So we'll make sure we shoot that out in the follow-up email. Anything that the panelists mentioned today in regards to resources will be sent in the follow-up email to everyone. I'll be sending that out tomorrow morning. And lastly, if you'd like to get involved in GA, you can check out our website. And just a little bit about General Assembly. My name is Hannah. I'm the local marketing producer for General Assembly Denver. My pronouns are she and her. And General Assembly is a global education company. We focus on helping people find the work that they love through education. So how we do that is through immersive bootcamp courses. So in software engineering, user experience design, data science, and we also have part-time courses in digital marketing, product management, UX, front-end engineering, a few other ones. We also do some short form classes. So if you are just looking to upskill on the weekends, evenings, sometimes during the middle of the day, There's just like 2-3 hour classes, just 6-hour boot camp. So check those out as well. But then one of my favorite things that I like to put together is these events where we have industry experts speak on their expertise, and we have a lot of experts on this panel today. So with that in mind, I'm going to kick things over to Fen, who's going to be moderating our panel.
Hello, it's me, Fen, the lovely voice you're going to hear for the next hour. Hopefully, I won't be too annoying. We are here. Thank you so much for that intro, Hannah. We're going to go through and introduce all of our panelists in just a moment. But first, I'll talk a little bit about me. My name is Fen Slattery. I'm your lovely moderator. My pronouns are they, them. I'm the accessibility lead at Click Studios. We are a one-stop web shop that builds beautiful and important things for all different sorts of companies around the world. Northwestern, McDonald's, tiny law firms you've never heard of to big companies you have, we do it all. It's my job to make sure that everything that goes out our door, or I guess metaphorically our door at this point, but is usable by people with disabilities. I am also a person with disabilities myself. Amongst other things, I'm autistic, so I come from my own experience. I'm also a co-organizer of one of the largest digital accessibility meetups in the world, the Chicago Digital Accessibility and Inclusive Design Meetup. I'm always afraid I'm going to mess up the name of my own meetup. In my free time, I do things like writing role-playing games and hanging out with my cats. That's me. I'm going to call on the next person. John, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, well, my name is John Samuel, and I am the Chief Innovation Architect at LCI Tech. It's a division of LCI, the largest employer of Americans who are blind. My pronouns are he, him, his, and my kind of accessibility journey started really when I was 19 years old, and I was diagnosed with a degenerating eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa and was told I was going blind. But when I got that news, it was devastating. I was ashamed. I didn't want people to know. And so I hid the fact that I was losing my sight. And so I lived almost half my life not letting people know that I was legally blind and losing my sight. And it really took me joining LCI to feel like I was coming out of a closet of blind person, so I could really be my authentic self and be able to share my story and my experiences. And our whole mission at LCI Tech is really to help people with disabilities get jobs in the knowledge economy. And one way we're doing that is by removing the accessibility barrier. So thank you also for having us here today.
Fen, I believe you're on mute.
I am on mute. Thank you. John, what time is it where you are? Just for
Oh yeah, it's 5 something. Let's see, it's like 5. You know, 5:10.
It's
There we go.
4 o'clock by me in Chicago. So.
Yeah, so it's 5:10 here, and I'm in Raleigh, Durham.
There you go. Oh,
there we go.
There we go.
Both of them. There we go.
Lynn, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Lynn Wehrman. I'm the founder and president of WECO Accessibility Services. My pronouns are she, her, and person or professional with a disability. I started WECO back in 2011, basically as an outcrop of work that I was doing for the state of Minnesota Department of Transportation. But I grew up with 2 disabilities, epilepsy and mental illness. And like John, I hid my disability a lot of my life. So WECO is an organization that is a group of digital technologists who all are required to live with disabilities to do the accessibility work. And John and I obviously need to talk about some things because we employ a lot of people who live with disabilities right now. Everybody that works at WECO lives with a disability. So we're designed to be companies built in accessibility audit and usability testing program without having to go out and find people who live with disabilities as subject matter experts.
And what time is it where you are, Lynn?
It is Central Time. I'm in Minneapolis, so it is about 4:10.
There we go. Santina, do you want to go next?
Sure, would love to. I am Santina Croniser. I'm a senior accessibility engineer at VMware. My pronouns are she, her. I do have an invisible disability, so if you see me looking down, I'm actually referring to my phone, so I cover everything. Memory is a part of it. It also changes day to day, so while I'm having trouble with my memory today, I probably won't in about a month. My background of how I got into accessibility, my invisible disability was something I was not born with. It's something that developed as I got older. Initially, it was through meeting somebody at Northwestern University. I was working as a staff member there. And he was actually a really cool incoming freshman, a blind skateboarder. And we didn't have anything at that point in time that was really built with accessibility in mind, and certainly was probably inaccessible. So instead of him going through the entire legal process and suing the university, he actually came to the web team at that point in time and explained to us what he needed and really showed us his experience with using our products. And since I was a young budding developer at that point in time, I just wanted to take on any challenge that somebody could give to me. And that really was the entryway for me to define myself, define my career, and to learn development at the same time that I was learning accessibility. So that was over 10 years ago at that point. I've gone through a myriad of different iterations of accessibility and being a developer, sometimes working in a company that didn't care about accessibility, other times working as an accessibility SME. And that's really led me to where I am now, working for VMware. The time zone that I'm in right now, I'm in the Bay Area. That's probably not surprising since I'm working in one of the big tech companies, and it is 2:14 where I am right now.
Awesome. Thank you. And last, Jana, if you could go next.
For sure. So I'm very excited to be here. So I am talking from Seattle. So in Seattle, it's 2 p.m. right now, surprisingly sunny. So I am Jana. So I am a UX designer at Microsoft. So I work for the Azure portal and on the mobile device management products. So my story with accessibility started when I volunteered at the Special Olympics event. And then I could witness and see the impact of that event on people with disabilities and their families. So I started to get more engaged with those initiatives inside of Microsoft until at this point I became very proudly the accessibility champion on my org. So I help the teams to be more aware of the topics, organize trainings on all of that. So that's my passion area.
That's awesome. Great. Well, panel over, everyone go home. No. Let's dive in. As a quick note, because I'm seeing it mentioned in chat, which I think is that way, or maybe it's that way, I don't know. Somewhere on your screen, as a reminder that's there. A few folks have been asking if there will be a recording available afterwards, and there will be, so don't worry about that. Hello, future people watching this recording. Okay. Let's dive in. Our plan is we are going to go through some questions for about a half hour or so that we've prepared ahead of time. And then we're going to have a bit of time for audience Q&A. Cool. Okay. Let's start with maybe an obvious first question. Everyone attending might not have the same idea of what accessibility even means. So I'll turn it over to our panel, and I'm interested to know what accessibility and related the ideas of usability and inclusion mean to you. Who wants to kick us off?
Well, this is John. I'll kick off. You know, when I think about accessibility, it really is about, again, removing that barrier and making sure that all people can access it. But really, you know, to me, it ties into what diversity and inclusion means to me. And I've actually included accessibility in my whole, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, kind of the acronym, and spell it out as IDEA, so IDEA, because it's all about making people belong. And I think that when we realize it's about people, belonging in with the digital accessibility space, belonging in the technology space. But I really think at the end of the day, accessibility is removing those barriers to help people belong. So I think it can sum it up with that one word.
Nice.
I think I would just piggyback on what John said. I've been in the field since 2008, and I remember what might seem to some folks as the old days, when it was something special that you did at the end of a project if you had enough money. And to me, accessibility, usability, and inclusion is creating a new normal. At WECO, everybody has to do accessible work in some format. So when we have new employees that come in, we give them a Microsoft accessibility module that we've constructed and teach to our clients. They're all required to take it because everybody inside of WECO has to generate accessible emails, accessible documents, because it is just what we call the norm. And so when I think about it, I think about this not being something that people tack on at the end, but it just becomes a normal part of what you do every single day, because of course you would want to include everyone.
Yeah, and just to kind of build on that and to kind of give people a way to think about it, accessibility oftentimes is thought of as the end point, so the destination. So a different way to think about that is inclusive design, of including people with disabilities, hopefully in your processes and in your usability studies, as well as when you're thinking about it, who are you designing for? So ensuring that people with disabilities are included in your user stories, as well as it being a checkpoint at every point that you are developing your product.
I love it. Jana, do you have any nuggets of wisdom to add about what accessibility is?
Yeah, I heard like, actually, I think similarly to all the comments that you guys did before. I think from the design perspective as well. So we are not the users. We think about sometimes the designer as the user. So it's a really great opportunity to think about a new type of user as well. So like the people with disabilities. So understanding better their environment, how they use, and thinking about like a way of a different interaction model. So that's how I think about accessibility every day.
Great, awesome. Well, we have a sort of a groundwork laid for what accessibility is. Next question I want us to talk about is, how do you, okay, so we have this idea of accessibility as a process, as something that you don't just check off, like Lynn mentioned at the end of the project. How do you measure accessibility then? I mean, how do you set a standard? How do you measure whether you've made an impact as far as the accessibility of your product? How do you know that it's accessible and that you've hit your goal, whatever that might be?
Well, I guess I can hop in here. You know, I think from kind of going back to I think one word that came, what accessibility is, and that all four of us talked about was actually people, right? So I think, there's the level of accessibility, there's usability, but I think the level of standard is, can somebody come through and have a good experience and being able to navigate through your product, your service, and do it seamlessly, and do it with, independently. I think it really comes down to actual people, and I think that's often forgotten in a lot of cases. Sometimes people think about accessibility as just a checkbox or a line of code here or there, but it's really about the people, and if people can actually have a great experience, just like anyone, that all people can have a great experience. I think that's a good sign of accessibility.
I think that for us at WECO, our clients have two real realities regarding accessibility. And we represent that reality of, can they actually use it? Because something can be legally accessible and utterly unusable. And we've all run into that. And I think that's what John was commenting on. But we have a number of clients that have to check those boxes to be able to remain in business. And so what we really pride ourselves in is that our accessibility team is very sensitive to that. And so what we follow, the legal standards, we kind of look at it two ways. There's legal standards and then there's preference or usability. The legal standards that we measure that most organizations need to adhere to are web content accessibility guidelines. The base right now, pretty much worldwide, is 2.0 AA. A lot of our clients are moving to 2.1. I know that we're actually taking a look at 2.2 next. We just pushed that out in our social media feeds. I think it's tomorrow morning that's going out. But then there's also user preference. So I think that what has to be looked at is that, yes, you've got to satisfy that requirement, but you're still going to have legal issues if people living with disabilities cannot access it, if that usability part isn't there. And there is a way that you can marry those two, and it is possible. And we work really hard every day to empower our clients to see that that is possible.
That's a really good point around both, about how to some organizations that checkbox is important and it is necessary. Yeah. Santina or Jana, do you have other thoughts to add?
I do, and it's to kind of talk about the reality also, just kind of building on Lynn's description. I've worked, as I mentioned, as an accessibility SME for a large accessibility consultant firm.
Santina, could you clarify what an SME is for folks who don't know?
Sure, a subject matter expert.
Thank you.
Which it's always a little weird to call oneself an expert on anything. But auditing is often a form of the process. So when you think about tangible, measurable metrics, companies love audits for that reason. And so while it's certainly vital to continually include disabled users into your process and make sure that you're always testing and making sure that that's in alignment with what you're producing, that does have kind of those tangible metrics that upper management really loves to take a look at. And so if you're continually improving against the web accessibility content guidelines, those audits help to measure that with numbers. But it is problematic when people see that as the end all be all. And unfortunately, there are a large number of people that do see that as the end all be all. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that there's the voluntary, I always forget what VPAT stands for, voluntary product accessibility template that companies often issue either through a third party or through their own assessment. So that's a way that if you work for a government or if you have a service that delivers products to a government, you should be looking at that VPAT assessment to figure out how accessible a product is. So that's another form of measurement. So hopefully that helps to provide some insights of the technical measurement of accessibility.
Great. Just as a really quick note, because it did come in the Q&A, a question about closed captioning. There is a mention that Emily shared, if you scroll up a little bit in chat, about a link you can use for automated live captioning that was provided. So if you scroll up, you'll see some info. Thank you for asking about that. Jana, do you have anything to add?
So yeah, I think for our team at Microsoft, we also have like this pretty business focused way of measuring things. So we do have like internal and external scorecards that we use for measuring like how products are going against WCAG standards, and also like how teams are doing across like over the board to see like how, and we do like measure in terms of letters, like from A to D, how the products are going against like each other across like the whole org. So how we are moving the needle forwards towards to that goal that we want to achieve as a company. Another, I think, data that we use for like tracking how good we're going is about the number of bugs that we have at the end of the process. So, and right now we also have like a program called Accessibility and Design that we we drive some initiatives to take like user research to that part of the process. So we minimize all this cost with the bugs that we have at the end. So it's basically like looking across like all the parts of the process and how we can make that process better, and like in terms of business and the process of that we work on, and make that move the needle towards accessibility and building products that are better to people with disabilities.
That's great. I have one tiny thing to add, just because we haven't mentioned it. In my work, we've, in addition to, user testing with disabilities, testing against the WCAG, all those things, we also try to find kind of unique indirect ways to measure accessibility. For example, we have a site that recently launched for a client that is a major zoo. And one of the additional ways that we're sort of thinking about how usable is the site, how accessible is it, is are they having to hand out fewer paper maps? Mm. That is the website and the digital map sufficient enough so that way they're having to print and hand out fewer physical maps? So I bet you could find some innovative ways to measure accessibility like that too. Just a nugget of inspiration. I keep saying nugget. I don't know why. Okay, let's move on, nuggets. How about, ooh, this is a good one. Okay, so I'm sure we would be here for hours if I asked, how do you make a website accessible? That's a pretty big question. How about instead, I want to know maybe what some quick wins are in accessibility. Like what are some quick and easy ways you can improve the accessibility of a design? What are some common things you might see that are wrong, or simple fixes you can make on a lot of designs?
So yeah, so I think I can jump in on this one. So I would say like 3 major things. Like the first would be to create a library from scratch that is has all these built-in components for accessibility. So for example, think about colors that have like good contrast ratio, like font sizes are good in place, and components as well. For example, if you have user interaction models that you have to use for your website or mobile phones, that your library is like has all this thinking put through like since the beginning. So like once people are utilizing that on your company, they have this one thing less to think about in terms of accessibility and checking every point on that. So the second thing I would say, like a quick win, would be like to use a lot of those plugins that they have for checking and do like quick fixes during your built-in process of designing things. So you can check your contrast ratio. You can even check like the sequence of the keyboard navigation. So all those things, and would be like a huge plus if you can find people with disabilities to test your designs. I think that's a very important piece. As I mentioned like before, it's hard to put on their shoes of certain users that you don't have like a close relationship, or and you can watch them closely using the products. And I think for what I've observed recently is like the spec navigation, especially for keyboard navigation, it's a huge pain point for customers, since you can go like from point A to B in half an hour, or you can design those this flow like with more optimized, with having that person in mind, that user in mind. So I would say that spec for keyboard navigation is also hugely important.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. Keyboard navigation, that's one of the easiest tests you can do, and it was probably going to catch a lot of things that your automated tests don't. For example, things that use JavaScript, on-click events, things that behave like buttons that you can click on, but you can't actually navigate to using the keyboard. Does it show visual focus? A lot of these things kind of overlap with a lot of the disabilities that you're going to designed for. So just as an example, somebody who's using a screen reader needs to navigate through everything to make sure that they can access it with the keyboard, as does somebody who has a mobility issue. So that's the number one thing that I'm seeing when I'm testing, that the automated stuff isn't necessarily catching.
I will jump in and add one more thing, is that just do the basic things you were taught to do when you learn to develop and don't deviate from them. Oh my goodness, the nightmares I created at Minnet. I'm just saying. And it was probably more than just accessibility. It's like, don't mess with your cascading style sheet. Okay, so a big one for people living with disabilities is, I really like how heading 2 looks. I'm going to use that as a heading 1. And that really messes up people with screen readers. It's basic things. It really, I often say to our clients, accessibility is common sense, not rocket science. So.
Yeah, no, I'll jump on that because when I go to it, I mean, the heading structures, and I think that some of these basic things that are kind of the fundamentals of just, when you're building a site, thinking about those things. And I think if you have time to spend time with the actual person using assistive technology and seeing how people like myself who use a screen reader or using other types of assistive technology use it, you'll get those aha moments. And so when you see the first thing when I get to a site is going through this heading, that's why you'll see why the heading structure is so important. Or looking at, making sure that the link text are labeled properly and color contrast and these type of things. But it really is, as Lynn's talking about, it's those fundamentals that everyone learns. It's just trying to speed up the process can kind of, those shortcuts can sometimes miss out on those fundamentals that are needed for everyone.
Definitely. Like I said, we could probably talk about that question alone for hours. I'm seeing a lot of folks in the Q&A and in the chat asking more follow-ups about these things, and I'm sure probably my panelists and myself, we can give you links to learn more about all those things we just said if you've not heard of them, because we'd be here all day. So we'll definitely give you resources to learn more. So shifting a little bit, we've talked about how we know if something's accessible, quick ways to address accessibility and improve it. I know we all on the panel here, we have all of our own different motivations for caring about accessibility, and for a lot of us, it's because we're disabled. Unfortunately, a lot of other folks might not be familiar with those reasons, or a lot of us might even face pushback in our workplace or with clients or whatever about doing this work. I'm interested to know what sort of arguments you can provide about why accessibility is important. And I'm not going to let you have the easy one of caring about people is the right thing to do. So I've taken that answer. Caring about people is ethical and important. But that's not always an argument that works in some contexts. So what other arguments do you have for accessibility that our listeners could use in their workplace?
I'll hop in there. There's a business case. And I think that when we often talk about how there's 20% of Americans or the population in general who have a disability. And so, making products and services accessible, it comes down to dollars. And if you're missing out on a sizable part of our population from who may be able to consume your content and products, then you're missing out. And so if you don't include people with disabilities in your teams, it's hard to really understand and build that empathy that to understand what those needs are of this individual. So I often talk about how proximity builds empathy, but proximity builds empathy, but that'll also translate into dollars.
Well, and we're all temporarily abled, face it. The World Health Organization released a study a few years ago that said on average, human beings in more developed countries will spend at least 8 years of their lives living with a disability. We're all probably going to become disabled at some point in time. So there's that. But just like John said, the people living with disabilities are the largest unrecognized minority group in the United States and around the world. And people living with disabilities in the United States, the stats have pushed up to close to 22%. Do you want to alienate 22% of the market share? I know I don't. If you're a business owner and you can live without 22%, have at. So.
And if the ethical as well as monetary implications are not enough, you need to think about the legality of it. There is an obligation in the United States, specifically, as I mentioned, if you are doing business with the government. Also thinking globally, you know, our laws here in the United States aren't necessarily as strict or as overarching as they are in other countries. If we think of Ontario, for example, they have an initiative to be accessible by, I believe it's 2022. And so that's an overarching goal specifically with that province, also in other varying different countries across the globe. So if you're only a player here in the United States, maybe your legal obligations aren't necessarily as strict. If you choose to do business across the globe and to really be a major player, then you absolutely must pay attention to accessibility.
There you go. Jana, do you have any other reasons you can add?
Yeah, I think those are all great points. I think the business is one that we use a lot, and that's very clear when you measure like the before and after of implementing things with accessibility in mind, especially right now that we are shifting a lot of these checking points to the design part of the process. So like for me, what I encounter like in terms of a micro level internally was how to get team members along on that same journey. I think was more like bringing them on this, or starting from the stage they're in, like how much they know about accessibility. Sometimes it can be daunting, like to learn all about the legal part, about all the requirements, and even how to apply design into accessibility. So I found out that being patient and bringing people along, like on that journey together, like and that was helpful, like to bring, for example, engineers, get their buy-in when we have to collaborate and move and create things with accessibility, not at the end of the process in the product, but during the design phase as well. So was a way of educating people and like sharing things and doing that groundwork of bringing people along, I think was effective in our teams.
That's wonderful. I have one tiny thing to add on top of what Lynn was saying about that awesome statistic. Thank you for that, about how many of us will be disabled if we're not already. In addition to that, accessibility helps everyone. I like to talk about how disability just amplifies usability problems. The usability problems are stronger for us, or maybe we notice them sooner, but we're just uncovering problems everyone's gonna have. And the same things that you do, especially on the web, that are, you know, help people with disabilities, help everyone else too. Captions are a great example, right? If there are captions on a YouTube video, if I'm deaf, I might rely on those captions to know what's going on. But if I'm not, and I just forgot my headphones and I don't want to bug the person sitting next to me, I might read the captions. Or if the video is in a language or an accent I don't understand very well, I might rely on captions. So captions are good for everyone, include them. Same thing with a lot of other things around accessibility. They help all of your users. Cool. Okay. Oh my gosh, we are getting so many good. Oh, somebody asked, what was the statistic again? Lynn, would you mind sharing that again?
Sure. I can send it out so that you can email the link to the study and everything. That might be easier. But it's I think it's an average of 8 years. It was a World Health Organization study that went out about 3 years ago, I think.
That's great.
I'm a stats geek. So
I love it.
Stats, let me know. I got them.
I love it. I'm so happy to have a new stat I didn't know. Okay, so in the interest of time, we have tons of really good Q&A questions coming in. So I think I'm actually going to pivot to those a little bit sooner. And I want to leave all of our panelists time at the end as well to give final wrap-up thoughts. But if it's okay with the four of you, I'm going to pivot because we have a ton of cool questions coming in. Sound good? Cool? Okay, I'm getting nods and thumbs up. I like it. Okie dokie. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to start with the earliest one. Rachel Novick has asked, if you're starting your web development career and you want to focus on accessible web development, how should you go about doing that? Should you get a job at a company and kind of make the position exist? Should you find a company that specifically has, you know, an accessibility department? How should you do it? How should you start your career?
Big pause on that one. I guess I'll take it.
Yeah.
I think that I would jump in to learn about accessibility, specifically if you're a developer-focused kind of individual, understand the different kinds of things that you can do to solve for accessibility, potentially even tackle some of the issues that are problematic. For example, learning how to code an accessible modal will give you a lot of different things with accessibility specifically that you can focus on. So just learning and making sure you have that. As far as how you approach that, whether you have a company that you start in, or if you choose to go into an accessible role, I've kind of done both. So the challenge if you go the starting in the role and then moving into accessibility, you need to have a company that is accessibility minded. If they're not already accessibility minded, you're really fighting a really difficult struggle, and oftentimes that's all by yourself. If you have some other folks that are interested in accessibility and are willing to be champions with accessibility, you're going to have an easier time of that, especially if it's coming from top down, especially if there's somebody that already has that value. So especially starting out in your career, that's a very difficult argument to try to make with companies. So I would recommend choosing somebody that is already going to kind of make that path easy for you. If you do choose to move into an accessibility focused role, that's why I said really educate yourself and make sure that you do understand those things with accessibility. It will pave the way for you to be able to land that accessibility role. Certainly having a lot of knowledge about accessibility is going to place you into the accessibility field a lot faster than just trying to learn that on the job. So really, whichever way you choose to approach that isn't wrong. It's just kind of figuring out your way and trying to figure out how you want to approach that.
Well, and I'll add to that at the risk of opening the floodgates for Operations Director Kelly Ryan, but we're a mission-based company at WECO. We know that we're essentially living through what I call the Wild West of accessibility. There aren't a lot of rules. There isn't a lot of paths to follow. We have a very robust internship program at WECO, and a lot of our accessibility specialists came to us either as testers or as interns, and they interned with us, and you just don't know if you've got the chops for this sometimes unless you try it on. The other thing that we've done is that we have taken talented usability graduates that have interned with us. Now, these are not always necessarily people who live with disabilities. And probably one of the crowning achievements of our internship program was last year, one of our interns, Jake, was hired by Best Buy Incorporated after he had interned with us because he had interned with us. So we're a little bit like Johnny Carson, who used to give comedians, you know, we really try to help people get started in accessibility. And we're a tiny firm. We're not ever going to be the attractive employer that Microsoft is. But if we can benefit from that talent and give somebody a start, we're finding that our credentials are desired for larger organizations having worked with us. So we're happy to do that. So I apologize, Kelly, if you're going to have 1 million applicants when you come back from Labor Day now. Sorry. But that is one way, is that we can offer some practical experience to help you get started.
Rest in peace, Kelly's inbox. Okay, so lots of good questions. This is, let's see, I'm trying to find the ones here that are probably quick answers. Again, looking through a lot of these questions, I think we're going to be able to share a lot of good links. Since a lot of you are asking for, you know, do you have a course you recommend or a website you recommend we read? So I would invite panelists to maybe take a look through that when we're all done and just send some links along, because we don't need to tell you links out loud. Here's a really good one though. So 3 different people have asked this one. In general, how do you find people with disabilities for user testing? How do you do that? Some people have asked about, especially like, you can't do it in person right now because of COVID. And if you're having those difficulties, how do you find people with disabilities for testing?
I'll hop on this actually real quick, because actually I did a presentation for the Chicago meetup, I think a couple months ago, on this whole topic of actually leveraging, you know, professionals with disabilities in your usability testing. Because there are, you know, I work for an organization that's part of the National Industries for the Blind, and we just happen to be the largest organization, but there's around 96 organizations like ours across the country, and who are focused on, you know, their mission is employing people who are blind, and there's other ones that are focused on different disability groups. But, you know, tapping into these type of organizations is a great way. And I think that one of the silver linings of COVID has been this virtualization of things, and now you're able to tap into people at their homes in situations where they're much more comfortable using their own computer systems, using their own setup, and you don't have to waste time, you know, user time, kind of testing time to get them set up in a good environment. So I think this is a really good opportunity to be able to tap into local agencies like Industries for the Blind agencies, or you can tap into you can talk to your services for the blind or vocational rehab in your state and ask them if there's any organizations who've done a good job of hiring people with disabilities, and seeing how you can work with them or professionals there.
That's so helpful.
I'll build on that too, as John, is that, you know, WECO is a very unique organization in that we're mission-based for-profit, and that we cover all 4 disability classifications. We're designed to give you those testers so you do not have to go out and look for them. You know, that said, we can do the test. If you want to simply, you know, commission our testers to do your test, people do that too. But the other thing that's been really exciting is that in early days, Carroll Center for the Blind in Newton, Massachusetts came to us because they were training testers in organizations similar to John's who were blind to do testing, but they didn't have testers living with other disabilities. So we actually backfill those tests for them. But I think that one thing that's important that John touched on is that you're going to get a different quality of test when you just pluck somebody off the street that has never done usability testing at WECO. Our testers are trained to give you pointed feedback so that you have something that's actionable and it's actually translated by our accessibility specialists into action items. So it can work to get people off the street, but it's a little bit more work. And there are agencies like John's, the Lighthouse. I know we've talked to Chicago Lighthouse for the Blind. They've wanted to work with us. There are ways to find people and to have them ready to go and trained. So
yeah, awesome. That's super helpful. Thank you. I know a lot of people have questions about that. Let's see. Okay, we're gonna do rapid fire questions now, because there's a bunch that I think will have like 3-word answers. They're gonna be really quick. Okay, ready? Get your answering brain ready. First, which countries have the strictest accessibility laws? It sounds like a trivia question. I'm not sure.
It does. I'm not sure that I know the answer to this one.
I think Australia has some.
Go ahead, John. What'd you say?
No, I was going to say Australia has some. You know, I think Australia has. I think they mandate all public and private sites, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Canada's pretty stringent. They're fining for inaccessibility.
There's a specific Canadian province that I'm blanking on that recently passed an accessibility law.
Ontario, wasn't it?
I believe you. I don't remember.
AODA?
Oh, yeah, there you go. See? Excellent. Good job. You passed this trivia question. Okay. No, I don't mean to diminish it. That's a very good question. I felt like I was on Jeopardy or something.
We're expecting a prize at the end of this. You know?
Oh, boy, there's going to be a final lightning round. You're going to go head to head. It'll be great. Okay. How about this one? I know the answer to this. Is there an accrediting organization or certification around accessibility? Santina, I know you have it. Do you want to answer the question?
Sure. There's actually two different ones. So IAAP has a web accessibility specialist, WAS certification. Also, I can't remember the acronym for the other certification, but
Certified Professional in Accessibility Core Competencies.
yes, thank you. So you can have both of those certifications, as well as oh, why am I blanking on the Trusted Tester program?
Yeah, Homeland Security.
Yes, Homeland Security. Yes, that's also a way that you can have some sort of a certification that's less official, and it's also free. So I believe it's free anyway. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But those are the ones that I know of personally.
Hooray! I love it. Anybody else have any quick notes about certification or anything good? Okay, cool. That covers it more or less. Let's see, what's next? What's next? I'm trying to find the other quick questions with the amount of time we have. Somebody's asked. Y'all have such good questions. I'm just trying to make sure with our limited time we have. How about this? I'm going to rephrase it to make it a quicker question. What if you had to pick like one best resource for learning about accessibility, either I don't know, a website or a book or a podcast or I don't know, what one resource would you recommend?
Ooh.
I would recommend our website first, but actually
promotion's okay, Lynn, that's good.
But we have a free accessibility library, but I really want to give a shout out to WebAIM. WebAIM has been founded with your federal dollars, so you paid for it, and they're a wonderful group of people, and they have actually become mentors to our accessibility specialists. We call them all the time, and when we see them at conferences, we think they're rock stars. So WebAIM is a great resource.
Awesome, and we'll provide links for everybody in chat too. What other quick hits? What other recommendations?
I feel like if the designer is trying to get started, like the B3C would be like a great way to go. It can be like a lot to take in at the first, but you'll learn a lot about like the standards that companies have to apply to, and also there's also like very good material from Microsoft that is accessibility inclusive design. So it's a great material for the designer to get in touch with this spectrum of users and people with disabilities. So I would recommend this too.
Yeah, and I can confirm Jenna is not just saying that because she works for Microsoft.
No, it's a very good material. Indeed.
They are truly amazing. Microsoft resources are some of my favorites. So it's not just because you work there, it's really good.
Yeah, for sure.
What other, Santina, John, do you have one good recommendation?
See, I don't have one. I have a list that's like yay long, like very long list, and it depends what you're looking for. So I'm happy to share that resource after.
We'll give everyone our full lists.
Yeah, it includes both free as well as paid resources. So really just depending on what you're looking for and what maybe your company might pay for.
Awesome. John, do you have one you could recommend?
Yeah, I think I'll double back onto the W3C, again, as a free resource. Again, it is a wealth of knowledge. But I think they show you, kind of the hows and do's, and they even show you the business case. So there's case studies. They've done a great job.
That's awesome. If my opinion counts, I'm giving a second vote to Lynn's of WebAIM. I love WebAIM. Cool. Okay, so we have about 4 minutes left. There's so many good questions we didn't get time for. Thank you so much, everyone. We will be sharing links out, the recording of this, all that good stuff. I'm interested to know from each of our panelists, two final questions. The second to last is there any piece of wisdom that you didn't get a chance to share in our panel today that you want to make sure everyone hears around accessibility?
Sure, I'll jump in first. I really appreciate the fact that we didn't talk about disability simulations today. Disability simulations are not representative of real people living with disabilities, and they can be really misleading. So thank you for not discussing that today. I would just like to mention that the ICT Testing Symposium coming up in October, our accessibility director, Suanne Rodriguez, will be presenting a paper on how to do remote testing, the age of COVID, with testers who live with disabilities. And I actually just approved her white paper today and she just sent it off. So just look up the ICT Testing Symposium, register for that, because I think that'll be really helpful if you're trying to do some remote testing on your own. So.
I love it. I love it. Santina, do you have a final piece of accessibility wisdom?
It's not a piece of accessibility wisdom, but a further thought. We didn't really get a chance to discuss intersectionality, and I think that's incredibly important.
Thank you.
Sure, especially given the climate right now. So making sure that you're not just thinking of one specific type of person with a disability, that you're thinking of them as a whole person, what they might bring to the table, whether that's race, whether that's queerness, whether that's gender, but certainly we're made up of more than just one thing. We're not just one person with a disability. That's not all we're coming to the table with. So, just kind of think about that. I know as a starting point, thinking about accessibility is new to a lot of people, but just start to shift your thinking as well, thinking that there's a lot more that you can think about.
Yeah, I'll add the quick note to that of disability is not distributed evenly. Certain populations and ages and ethnicities and gender identities are more or less likely to experience disabilities, and you can't look at somebody's disability alone. You have to look at the rest of who they are. So thank you so much, Santina. I apologize for not bringing that up sooner. Thank you so much. Jenna, do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, so I feel like for the designer that is looking to get more hands-on experience with designing for people with disabilities, I would say get curious, get your hands dirty with the tools out there, like testing yourself on your cell phone. Sometimes I ask people to do those quick exercises from our classes at GA. So it's a pretty easy way to starting, like to empathize with how people with disabilities use the digital products overall. So I would say stay curious and get to test the tools to get like a sense of what it is.
Wonderful. John, what's your last thought?
Yeah, no, I think often the case people try to try to do the test, just test to the checkbox, right? And I think using an accessibility checker and just thinking that's enough, right? Just to pass the test. But I think that it really is important to look beyond the checkbox and to really think about the people, and I think it comes back to that piece.
I love it. My one last thought is, especially when you have this panel of very talented experts talking about accessibility, remember that this comes from our years of experience and our personal experience and all that. And I know, especially if you're new to this, it can seem really overwhelming. We're giving you lots of tips and lots of resources, but for me, one of the things that helps me in doing this work day to day is remember that my goal isn't to make, although I would love everything to be perfect and every site I make to never have a problem, really my goal when I start my day is to try to make this one website better for at least one person. Mm-hmm. And I can do that. So I'll do that every day, and I'll make a lot of websites better for a lot of people. That's really what we're doing, right? We're not trying to be perfect, we're trying to be better. I feel so inspirational. Okay.
Well said.
Look at me. Cool. Okay. Last round, since we are at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 3 o'clock, whatever time it is where you are, we're at the end of the hour. If we could go around really quick, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you if they have any follow-up questions? And if you have a quick note of something you'd like to promote, like a white paper coming out, like Lynn did. How can we find you, and what should we know about what your work is that you're doing next? Lynn, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, our website is theweco, theweco.com. You can email our accessibility department anytime at accessinfo@theweco.com. And then I did obviously tell you that we have the white paper coming up. We also have free workshops and free events all the time. Check our website. We're mission-based, so there's a lot of things that we give away for free. We do have pre-recorded webinars on our website too that you can take advantage of, and a free resource library under a resource tab that links to all the laws, some free little testing software things, and things that you need to get started.
That's great. Santina, how can folks follow up with you, and what should they know about what you're doing?
Sure. You can follow up with me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. All of it is basically /Santina Croniser. I have dropped my Twitter as well as LinkedIn into the networking spreadsheet that is being shared. Also, I want to put in a plug for the Chicago Digital Accessibility and Inclusive Design Meetup. I'm also a co-organizer of that along with Fen. You can find that at meetup.com/A11YCHI.
Yep, and you don't have to be in Chicago to join us. We have people from all around the world.
Yep.
Jana, how can folks find you, and what should they know about what you're doing?
All right, so like 2 ways I would say. I'm not very huge on social media, but I do have a LinkedIn account that I would love to get in touch with people. So I also teach some classes at GA, General Assembly, and Accessibility and Design. So if you want to learn more on how to be a designer and working with accessibility, so sign up for the next one. So yeah, I would say these 2 ways.
And John, take us home.
All right, you can reach me by email at john.samuel@lcitech.com. And then you can also reach me on LinkedIn at /JohnGSamuel. And I guess, some of the announcements that are coming up from our end. October is Disability Employment Awareness Month. And so there's gonna be a lot of great events. Again, another way for developers and designers to get connected with the disability community, build that empathy. And on October 5th, LCI Tech will be announcing a joint venture that we are having with a digital marketing firm in North Carolina, and really trying to expand disability inclusion in the whole accessibility space. So lots to come.
That's awesome. And I was and will continue to be Fen Slattery. You can find me at fenslattery.com. I work for Click Studios, that's clickstudios.com. Twitter, I love to yell on Twitter about accessibility. So if you like to read people yelling about accessibility, you could check out my Twitter. All the links are in the chat. I don't have an exciting new thing to promote, which makes me think I gotta have an exciting new thing, but I do a lot of cool work you could check out. That's it for me. I'll hand it off to Hannah. Just a big thank you for everyone who came here today, and thank you to everyone who's watching this recording in the future. And thank you so much to the panelists. I want to ask you all a million more questions, but I don't have time. So
I just want to chime in and say thank you, Fen. You have been a delight and have made this absolutely wonderful.
Aw, thanks. Thanks so much. And thank you, Hannah, for having us. Hannah, do you have any last words?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone as well. Fen, an incredible moderator. You rock. Panelists, you were amazing as well. And the attendees had great questions. So everyone, this is a great event. I'm going to throw in a quick survey into our chat. If you have some time, give us some feedback. Let us know what you thought about the event. And yeah, check out that networking document as well if you want to connect with folks on here. And we'll be sending out resources and these links that were mentioned during this event in our follow-up. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a nice night or morning or wherever it is.
Thanks everyone for attending.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.